Today I want to move forward into understanding multi-touch in Godot. This is the next logical step from single touch. We already covered the single touch in the past few videos, which is one finger is equal to one drag, one tap, one swipe, or one finger swipe. Now we're going to expand into multiple touches. We're going to learn how to detect two or more fingers before we use that information for scaling, rotation, and swiping. So basically the goal is to learn how to track every finger touching the screen when each finger goes down, moves, and lifts off. The concept in Godot, each touch is represented by an event with a unique index, 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever, etc., etc. Index 0 is usually the first finger, and index 1 is usually the second finger, and so on and so on. If we store the touches in a dictionary or an array, we can know which finger is doing what. At this point, I'm going to mention that using a dictionary is preferable to an array because in dictionary, the indices are also known as keys are unique. So 0 will always represent the data for 0. 1 will always represent the data for 1. 2 will always represent the data for 2. So even if you delete one of those indices in a dictionary, it doesn't affect the others because it doesn't have to shuffle down. And another thing I want to mention is that the amount of touches that a device allows is not controlled by the programming language, or in this case by Godot or GDScript, or even your program. It's controlled by the OS and the device that you're using. Some devices might allow 2 touches, some may allow 10 touches. High-end multi-touch devices usually allow 5 to 10 finger touches at once. Your code should be a little more flexible and never assume a specific number of fingers. Always assume there's a minimum amount of fingers being used on a low-end device, unless of course your program is meant for multiple finger use. For example, a piano app or something like that. Okay, so to begin, let's just close off all these other items. Let's create a new 2D scene, and let's name this one multi-touch scene, and let's save this right away. What we can do as we're here, change the default scene to the multi-touch, so we don't have to go back and do that again. So when we launch the app, it launches on the multi-touch scene. Remember, you don't have to do this. You can probably create ways like little buttons to go from one scene to the next. I'm just showing single scenes for now. So let's start. Let's add a script to this multi-touch scene. Save right away. And it's going to be relatively short. As I said, we're going to use a dictionary to store the touches because it's multiple touches we're going to be detecting. So let's create a variable for that. And let's call it touches. And open and close curly brackets signifies that it's a dictionary creating. And let's start off with the that we've been doing all along with our touch examples. Let's start off with the input function, the underscore input function, and let's say if event, the same event that we spoke about up here in the brackets, if event is, so let's type touch, and we get autocomplete if event is input event screen touch. And if it is a screen touch, we want to know if the event was pressed, if it was a pressed event. And if it was a pressed event, we're just going to add an index to touches. So first index will be the event dot index. Remember, we said before that the input event screen touch gives us index numbers in a touch order, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we're just going to take the index of that event and store the position in the touches for that index. Event dot position. So I think that's simple enough. Basically, we're just taking the event position of whichever finger it was, whichever touch it was, if it's touch 1 or touch 2 or touch 3. But remember, indices start from 0. So if it's touch 0, that means the first finger. So if it's the first touch, that event will give you an index, we'll call, and that more than likely will be, in one finger case, will be touch 0, and you're storing the position of that touch for that index. This code should be more or less familiar to you because it's similar to the code that we use for single touch. The only difference is we're using an index now and creating a dictionary. So here we're just going to use a print for now, as we did before. And let's just say finger and the index of that finger is pressed at, and we're going to register the position let me just widen this. We're going to register that index and the position in the print statement. And again, just like before with a single touch, we're going to look for if the finger was released, if the touch was released. So else touches, and what we do is we erase the data, my spelling, we erase the data for that index. Touches dot erase event dot index. So what this is doing, if that index finger, because remember we touch and we do a lot of things, we move, we slide, whatever, and then we release, and once it's released we remove it because it doesn't exist anymore on the screen. For instance, we put our finger back down, it may or may not get the same index, but it is a unique index for that finger while it's on the screen. And let's just add another print here and say finger at that index is released. And simple as that. Let's just save this. And just like in the single touch examples, we want an else if. This is where it's not release, but there's a drag. So we're going to register the movement in an else if. Let's go back 1, 2, and line it up with the first if statement. And let's put else if, if the event is a drag. So let's just type in drag and we'll get auto complete. So if it's an input event screen drag, we're going to update the movement and the finger position with the movement. So we're going to say touches at that index at the event.index is equal to the event position. And let's show that on the output as well. So we'll put a print here as well. And we're just going to say that that finger with that index number, event.index, has moved to wherever it ended up, wherever the position has ended. This is the basic logic behind Godot's multiple touch detection. Let's save this and let's just run it to make sure that it's running in the debug screen. I'm leaving a little space so we can see what comes up in the output. And right now we can only test one touch because the mouse in the debug window can only emulate one mouse touch. We'll test it on my device shortly. So let's just click. So it says I'm clicking and I'm moving, and it says finger moved, finger 0 moved. I should have left some spaces there. Finger 0 moved, and every time I move it updates the position. I'm static now and I'm going to release, and it's going to say finger 0 released. So this works. Now let's get it onto my phone so we can test multiple touches. Let's close this off and I'll set up my phone. You'll notice the icon to remote deploy is working again. Let me just deploy this to my phone. Okay. So it's about to begin on my phone. It's launching. If this works well, we're supposed to see debugging statement in the output at the bottom of the screen here. So I'm going to use one finger, and if you notice it says finger moved, finger 0 moved, and if I let go it's released. I'm going to use two fingers, but one then two, and you can see it registers both of them. And I'm going to try successive fingers. Let's see how far it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I guess this one registers all 10 fingers, which is good for my phone. I only have 10 fingers, so I have to stop at finger 9. Remember, it starts at finger 0. But it's registering all, which is good, because we need to use this information to detect swipes, rotation, scaling, those type of things. Let me just end this. So here I just want to add something new. I just want to introduce you to something new. I'm going to put a new function called function draw. This is just for visible feedback on the screen. This is an underscore draw function. What we're going to do is we're going to draw something on the screen when the finger touches it. So what I want to do, I want to draw little circles wherever my fingers are touching. Little colored circles. So we're going to use the same information that we did just now. And we're going to say for I, because our touches dictionary is outside of the functions, so it's local to the full script, the full multi-touch scene script. If I wrote it on the inside of input, it would have only been local to the input function, but it's on the outside here, as you can see. So it's available to the whole. So I'm going to say for I, or we can just say for touch. It doesn't matter what you want to call it. I'm just going to say for touch in touches. This is similar to something called for each in C# and other programming languages. So we're saying for I, or for touch in touches dot keys. Basically what we're saying here is for whatever index that is in the dictionary that we have, if it is that index, we're going to select that index, and don't forget the tab here, and don't forget the colon like I just did. We're going to create a new variable called position, or whatever you want to call it. Circle position is equal to touches I. My mistake, we didn't use I, we used the word touch. Touches, touch. And at that point we want to draw a circle. This is a built-in Godot function to draw a circle, but it must be used within the draw function. And we can always look up this, but at the bottom here you'll see, so we need a position vector, so we're going to give it a position vector. Then we need a radius of a float type, a color maybe, the variable position that we created up here, we're just going to use that here again. And let's just, I found for my screen 100 was a good size for the radius. So 100.0, remember it's a float, so you want to put a 0.0 to let it know it's a float. The color, let's say color dot green. Yeah, a bright color more or less. And if you notice, it doesn't ask for any more. You can overload it if you want. I'm just going to say I don't want it filled, so I'm going to put false here now. But I could have just stopped right there if I wanted. And the width of that outline that I just stated I wanted. So I'm going to say the width, set it to maybe, I think 5.0 is a good size. And that's it. I don't need anything else here. I'm not going to anti-alias it. Let's save this. And let's run it on the internal debug screen and let's see what happens. Of course, we can only test one touch, but let's see. Ah yes, I forgot something important. I have the draw function, but we're not calling the draw function elsewhere. We need to call it using a statement known as Q redraw. And there's one if statement here if there's been touch or release, and we're going to use it for this if statement. So let's put it below that. It was touched. Let's go back one and say Q redraw, and that's all we need. That requests that you withdraw whatever is in the draw function. That's going to work as is. And for the circle to move with your finger movement when you're dragging on the screen, we also need to put the redraw, the Q redraw, in the else if. So let's just type it in here, Q redraw again, and that's it. We're done. Let's save this. Let's run. It's still going to show all the debug output on in the editor. Let's click one, and there we go, a green circle. Of course, I want to test all 10 fingers on my phone screen, so let's do that. Let's close this and get to that. Let me just run it on my phone again. And here we go. It's about to run on my phone. I believe that's the screen. Let's try one finger. And if you notice, on my actual phone screen, there's one finger there. If I move around, it moves with my finger. And if I let go, it disappears. Let me try all 10 fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that is wonderful. It works. Of course, some of my fingers are releasing accidentally when I'm trying to move around, but that's okay. As you can see with the dictionary, it doesn't cause any errors. And that's it. It works. It works fine. It looks good on my screen. There's visual feedback. We know it's working. And on the output here, all the print statements are showing that it's working. Of course, when you run in these programs, eventually you want to remove all those print statements because that's just for debugging. But I just wanted to touch on multi-touch in this video. I hope it was useful to you, and hope to see you in the next one.